Broadcasting from New York City to the world, it's the G-Man Interviews.
Welcome. Deputy Inspector Corey Pegues was born and raised in Queens, New York, and graduated from Andrew Jackson High School in 1987. Immediately after graduation, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and was assigned as a medical specialist and attended training at Fort Sam Houston, located in Houston, Texas. Upon completion of his medical training, he was assigned to a Calvary Unit in Fort Drum, New York, until the end of his enlistment in March 2001. After his honorable discharge from the Army, he enlisted in the New York State National Guard, where he spent the next 14 years of his military career. Subsequent to his discharge from the Army, Pegeeze entered the New York City Police Academy in January of 1992. After graduating from the academy, he was assigned to the 114th Precinct in Astoria, Queens, and served as a patrol officer and as a member of the Street Narcotics Enforcement Unit. In 1998, Pegeeze was promoted to the rank of sergeant and was assigned to the 81st Precinct in Brooklyn, New York. While at the 81st Precinct, he served as a patrol supervisor and as the precinct training sergeant. He was then promoted to the rank of lieutenant in 2002 and assigned to the Transit District No. 30 in Brooklyn. While there, he was assigned as a platoon commander. 6 months later, he was transferred to the 28th Precinct in Harlem, New York. D.I. Pegues held various positions while serving at the 28th Precinct, such as Lieutenant Platoon Commander, Special Operations Lieutenant, and Operations Coordinator. In December of 2006, he was promoted to the rank of captain and was assigned to the 75th Precinct in Brooklyn, where he served as an executive officer. His strong work ethic, knowledge of police work, and leadership was recognized, and he was transferred to Police Service Area 2 and was assigned as a commanding officer. In May 2008, he was promoted to Deputy Inspector, and in June of that year, he was assigned as the commanding officer of the 67th Precinct, which is one of the most challenging assignments in the New York City Police Department. After 3.5 years of successful crime reductions and excellent community police relationship building, in January 2012, Deputy Inspector Pegues was assigned to Patrol Borough Brooklyn North. On April 1, 2013, he retired after 21 years of service. Deputy Inspector Pegues joins us to offer his assessment of the NYPD's policies and procedures when dealing with communities of color. In addition, the decorated police veteran will share his thoughts on the Eric Garner and Michael Brown cases and the current state of policing in America. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the show, Deputy Inspector Pegues.
Thanks for having me.
Let's begin with the Eric Garner case. As you watched the video, what was your immediate reaction to the manner in which the officers handled the situation?
Well, my immediate reaction was there was no tactics. The cops, once Mr. Garner said he wasn't going and it stops today, it ends today, I felt like a light bulb should have went off, and he already displayed that he wasn't going to go with him. You could see he was physically bigger than them. They should have retreated. When I say retreat, not run away, just step back, call for backup, let the sergeant get to the scene, and do a tactical takedown of the individual. Or use some stuff like mace. They could have used a taser. They could have called emergency service. But I don't think it should have went the way that it went.
What would be the justification for the officer using what many regard as a chokehold if it was banned by the NYPD?
There's no justification. It's clear. It says chokeholds will, absolutely no chokeholds can be used. No obstruction of the airway or the windpipe. It's clear. It's right in the guide. There's no way he should. There's no justification. The only one I could think of is if Mr. Garner had a gun and he was shooting at somebody and the cop just ran up behind him and choked him and dropped him to the ground. Other than that, there's no justification.
Officer Daniel Pantaleo was responsible for applying the hold that took Garner down, and civil rights activists and members of the general public believe he should be terminated. However, as I watched the video, I noticed the other officers that were attempting to restrain Garner did not stop Pantaleo from applying the illegal hold. On August 19, I discussed this with a federal police officer in the state of Colorado, whom I won't name for obvious reasons, and he stated the following. If you see your partner or other officers doing something that they have no business doing, and you don't speak up or intervene, you're going to get hemmed up, that's a term that he used, and rightfully so. Period. End of story. The guys I serve with are not going to risk 15 or 20 years of service to the department because some asshole decides to ignore policing guidelines. In my opinion, the other officers involved in this unfortunate situation are just as culpable as Pantaleino. Do you agree?
I agree to a certain extent. I believe Pantaleino was the one that was responsible for the death because the ME put the report out and said the chokehold was a contributing factor along with his diabetes, his asthma. The other officers, they didn't apply the chokehold. So if there's going to be some sanctions on the officers, Pantaleino should get the brunt of it. Any of those other officers should be hit with some charges, maybe department charges. But if it's going to be an arrest situation, they have to look at the facts. And the facts is the medical examiner said the chokehold was a contributing factor to the death. So there was one person who applied it.
President of the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, Patrick Lynch, recently held a press conference to respond to what he called anti-police rhetoric that's permeating the city of New York. Several days later, you held a press conference in front of PPA headquarters and responded to Lynch's comments. You made the point that while defending his officers of wrongdoing, he should also display a sense of compassion and understanding for the families of the victims of alleged brutality or deadly force by police. You publicly stated Lynch is a friend. So take us inside the mind of the PPA president and explain to people why he always takes a hardline approach and refuses to show empathy.
Well, throughout the history of the New York City Police Department, PBA presidents have been staunch supporters of the officers, the men and women that they represent. And for some reason, I don't understand why they just take this line all the time. It's okay for the PBA president to sit back and say, hey, I'm going to be a staunch supporter of the officer in the situation. However, I refrain from making any statements regarding the chokehold at this time. He says that. The officers know that he's supporting him because he said it. And the public will say, hey, I guess he does have some empathy. But to outright say that it's not a chokehold when it's on video and every single person in the world knows an arm around the neck and you're squeezing is a chokehold, it's irresponsible of the president. And, if I still was a cop in his union, I would have probably been jumping up and down trying to oust him from that position. Very irresponsible.
Rank and file members of the New York City Police Department, including union officials, have expressed outrage over the fact that Commissioner Bratton and Mayor Bill de Blasio took part in a City Hall conference with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Many of them believe Bratton and Mayor de Blasio are fanning the flames of anti-police sentiment and racial discord in New York City by aligning themselves with Sharpton, whom they view as destructive and divisive. Do you agree with their assessment of Sharpton in the City Hall conference?
No. Number one, we do have a race problem. It's dealing with the police and minority communities. The facts don't lie. You could just look at the stop, question, and frisk. You could look at the quality of life issues. They're only in the minority communities, okay? Two, Reverend Al Sharpton is a world-renowned activist for minorities. If we didn't have him, I would be hard-pressed to find the second person that would do the job that he's doing. He's put his life on the line. He's gotten stabbed in Bensonhurst trying to support African Americans in their causes. He has an audience with the President of the United States, the governors of every single state. He is someone that you have to reckon with, and he's a leader of black people. So no, I totally disagree with them.
I spoke to a U.S. Marine who served 2 tours of duty in Iraq about the Garner incident and the unusual number of killings of unarmed black men by NYPD officers. And he says something rather profound when comparing military and police protocol. He noted that while in Iraq, he and his fellow Marines went by something called ROE, or Rules of Engagement, which states that you do not fire on an enemy combatant unless they fire at you. He went on to make the point that an enemy combatant on foreign soil seems to have more rights than an unarmed black man on a New York City street. Given the fact that you served your country honorably and proudly as a member of the United States Army, would you say the Marine has a point?
To a certain degree. The rules of engagement for cops are a little different. Actually, a lot. You got to understand, rules of engagement is in a wartime situation. You're in a war. The streets of the city of New York, it's not a war zone. So our rules of engagement are you can use deadly physical force, meaning shoot at somebody, when there's imminent deadly physical force being used against you or somebody else. We can't have a situation where cops are firing their guns only when bullets are being fired at them. I don't think anyone would want that to happen because we probably have a lot of cops getting shot. So when they perceive that imminent deadly physical force is being used, they have that option to use their firearm.
The killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri has received massive news coverage, and not just the U.S., but globally. From a law enforcement and procedure standpoint, what most disturbs you about the case?
Well, there's a few things that disturb me about the case. One is the killing of Michael Brown. Number two, the police handling of the entire situation. They really did not handle this. And as far as the shooting is concerned, I think we all agree that there was a struggle inside of the car, right outside of the car for the gun. The gun went off, and then he ran, and there was 5 more shots. So my issue is those 5 other shots. It's just so the public know, 6 shots could be a second and a half. So it's not a long time with 6 shots, especially if they're successive. Like bang, 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 bang. That's quick. You can get 6 rounds off in a second and a half. So there's a lot to still be determined. But the killing of an unarmed person anywhere in America is not good.
We now know that Michael Brown was struck by 6 shots. But is it possible that Officer Darren Wilson fired more than 6 shots?
That's a great question, and that's what I'm telling everybody's stuck on the 6 shots. Now, New York City Police, we have 16 bullets, 15 in the clip, 1 in the chamber. I don't know how many they have down there, and I'm pretty sure he had an automatic, probably a 9mm. So everybody's stuck on the 6 shots, but we don't know how many shell cases was recovered. He could have emptied that gun. In 15 shots, you're going to do that in 2-3 seconds tops. So that's the question, Gary, that everyone is waiting to get the answer to, because the medical examiner, he doesn't have that information. The only people who have that is the investigators at the scene that picked up the rounds. Now, if that was in New York City, we put cones down and it's numbered, like right. 1, 2, 3. They didn't do that down there. If you notice at the crime scene, they didn't have that stuff. At least it wasn't nothing on video.
And are federal investigators likely to obtain that information?
Oh, definitely. Federal investigators they're gonna obtain every single thing.
On August 18th, I believe it was, in an edition of the Huffington Post, former New York City Police Commissioner Ray Kelly had taken the Ferguson Police Department to task for the way that they handled the situation. If you happen to have read the article, what did you think of the former police commissioner's comments?
I think his comments were spot on. The police chief definitely botched this investigation from the very beginning. They botched it. They should have released that name within, 48 hours and an official picture. They have yet to release an official picture. We have like Facebook pictures from his family or friends that they got online. They still haven't released an official photo. They released a video of Mr. Brown taking some cigarettes. People are calling it a robbery. I'd be hard pressed in Brooklyn for the district attorney to make that a robbery. To me, it looked like a petty larceny. He took some cigarettes. He pushed the guy. But that information should have been out. He had that information immediately. They had that information, but to let it out as soon as you let the officer's name out, it was a disservice to the Brown family. If you have information, you got to get it out. And like Commissioner Kelly said in that article, when Sean Bell was killed, we were very transparent from the beginning. Yes, it was 50 shots. He was hit this many times. These are the 6 or 5 officers that was involved. When you do stuff like that, we had protests for Sean Bell. Reverend Al got locked up. Reverend Doherty got locked up. A lot of prominent, I think Sidney Poitier got locked up, or Harry Belafonte. You transparent with people, they're still going to be upset, but they're not going to burn the place down. They just want justice. And when you do what you're doing in Ferguson, withholding information and leaving too many questions in the air, people are upset and they're ready to burn the place down, which I definitely don't condone.
If you were summoned for a meeting with Missouri Governor Jay Nixon to discuss the increasingly dire situation in Ferguson, What advice would you offer to try and quell the anger and tension?
Well, the first thing I would look for him to do, I would tell him that he should get rid of that police chief in Ferguson. He should go. He should be the first to go. See, when you start taking the heads off people that's in charge, that had something to do, and when I say he has something to do with this situation, he's the chief of police. So everything falls under him. He's the chief of police. And plus the steps, the move that he made immediately after that and the days after that, having a militarized cops out there, you know, with tanks, armored tanks, MP5s. We don't even have that. So I've 22 years in the police department, almost 22 years. I could count on my hand how many times I've seen something like that. If I was at the riot or not, like all of this stuff. The kid is dead. Mean him by bringing these tanks there. You're not giving the public access to protest. That guy has to go. The second thing I will tell him is we got a serious issue with race relations in the country, and we could start here. Ferguson could be the flashpoint to heal America, and you have to diversify these police departments. 53 cops, only 3 blacks in a community that's 70,000, 70%. There's something wrong with that number. The math just does not work.
Like you say that, but according to the mayor of Ferguson, there is no racial problem.
That's another issue. The mayor, here you have the mayor not acknowledging that there's an issue. There have been several cases that has come up since this shooting that have racial overtone. There was a gentleman that was, I believe he was shot 21 times or he was beat up. You know, you can research all of that stuff. They have racial incidents down there. You need to confront these things. The sooner America realize, forget about Ferguson. In America, there's an issue with police and communities. And a lot of the minority communities are saying that the police are heavy-handed or they're racist. They stop questioning frisk ordeal, the quality of life issues. These things that only be done in minority communities. For instance, you know, we live in New York City. When you go to Bryant Park or Central Park, they have all of these shows. People bring wine. They open their wine bottles. Is that liquor? Yeah, that's liquor. Are they writing summonses to them? No, they're not giving them no summonses. But you go down to Brownsville and somebody gets a beer out of the bodega and drinks a beer, they get immediately they get issued a summons. It's the same thing. But how about that guy just came from work, he bought a beer because he just got fired? Why is it I have to give you a summons in Bryant Park? Y'all can sit there and drink your wine. Double standards.
As you know, many in this country were enraged after George Zimmerman was acquitted in the killing of Trayvon Martin. When examining the level of outrage being expressed throughout the country over the Garner and Brown killings, it's becoming more and more evident that a black storm is brewing, and that's a term that I created. If officers Daniel Pantaleo and Darren Wilson are not charged or convicted, would you be willing to go on record and say it could have a dangerous and devastating impact on police, community, and race relations in the United States?
I definitely believe it's going to have a serious impact on it because I can speak as an executive that was in the NYPD and as a black man. In the minority community, people are fed up. People are fed up with the cops getting away from killing people. And I'm not saying that the cops are coming to work to murder people. I know that. I can honestly say I don't believe even the Pantaleno situation, the situation of Ferguson, these cops don't come to work and say, look, I want to kill somebody today. But what's happening is people are dying. So you got to be culpable. And in the minority community, they're tied every time someone gets shot. No one is being culpable in a criminal court, only in a civil court. But if there's black on black crime, somebody kills somebody, they get 20 years. Now, I understand that police are there to protect and serve, and they get the training. So sometimes, a lot of these times, they're doing these in the performance of their duty. But in the performance of their duty, they're to use the least amount of force necessary to quell these situations. Now, both of these situations, these two people were unarmed. There could have been another level of force that was used. I wasn't there, but you know they're unarmed, so that means that you got to take a little more time before you start doing these things. A little more time, even if it means you have to get a black eye. Sometimes cops have to fight with people. But you can't just go right to your gun. It's not fair. It's not fair.
Let me ask you something with regard to a news story that broke about a month ago. It was reported that the FBI had conducted an investigation on a police department in Florida and had determined that I believe it was a deputy police chief and one of its officers were actually rank-and-file members of the Ku Klux Klan. As someone who served as a commander, how concerned are you about situations like that occurring and or taking place or being prevalent in not just Florida, but states across the country? And I raise this issue because I've had a former Klansman, Scott Shepard, on my show, who served as the national leader of the Omerta Knights and the Ku Klux Klan. And he had revealed that there are numerous white supremacists, Ku Klux Klan members, and neo-Nazis that are actually serving in police departments nationwide. So when that Florida story broke, it served as confirmation of the former Klansman's claims. So having said that, how concerned are you about that, and is there anything that you could think of that the police departments would be able to do to prevent that from happening? Knowing you can never really know a person's full background, are there any safeguards that could be put in place to ensure that this isn't happening or will not happen?
Well, first, let me start off by saying, even when I heard about that story, I wasn't surprised. Second, I did hear your interview with Mr. Shepard. It was a great interview. I wasn't surprised when I heard about those guys from the Ku Klux Klan being exposed. I'm pretty sure the NYPD probably have a few people that's supremacists, as well as LAPD, Ferguson PD. And the only way that you're going to be able to try to weed this stuff out is doing, very in-depth investigations of the people. But the good thing now is social media, because what happens is everyone wants to put everything on the internet. So these teenagers are putting all their stuff on the internet. So moving forward, before going back, it probably was hard. Moving forward, you will be able to see the postings that these people put up. Because when you're 16, you're just a kid. You and your little racist organization, you putting up gang signs, you doing all this stuff, and then when you're 25, you want to get a job and say, "Hey, I'm cleaned up." But they'll be able to pull that stuff out. That's really the only way they're going to be able to weed that stuff out. Because now with social media, everybody's throwing everything online. So it'll be a lot easier than 20 years ago when I was coming up. You had to knock on people's doors. And my neighbor's not going to say anything bad about me, even if I was bad. But now you have other tools to find out and dig up information on people.
If there's anything else you'd like to say in closing, please take this opportunity to do so.
I just want to make a statement. When I do my tweets or on Instagram lately, I coined this new phrase that I always been using, but I'm putting it out more. I keep it right, not real. I just want to make sure that the people know that cops should always do what's right, not what's real, because what's real could be made up. Do what's right, and we have to teach our kids to respect the police, obey the orders at all costs, because if you kill them with kindness, they don't have no other, they have no other method to deal with you. You just kill them with kindness. Always obey their orders, because later you could get your lawyer, you could tell your mother, your father. Later we could deal with the situation. But I'm tired of seeing these young black men get in these situations where they're killed, shot, or maimed because they didn't comply. And I don't care how wrong you think the officer is, please bite your tongue, because we don't want no more Sean Bell. We don't want no more Diallo. We don't want no more Brown. We don't want no more Garner. That's what I want to put out there to the public. Please.
Thank you for being here, Deputy Inspector Pegues.
Thanks for having me.
I'm the G-Man. Until next time, stay cool, stay safe, and stay informed.